2, 1. Boom! We are live. Hi, Andrea.
Hi guys, hi Leo. Thank you for inviting me, and I'm very happy, guys, to be here. Of course, me and Leonardo, we know each other since university. Actually, we share the same path, educational path, and I'm very happy to be here today with you and to share a bit what we did in the last month, especially a significant, meaningful project related to the topic of Egyptology, I believe.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm super happy as well because I came up with because I visited the Egyptian Museum of Turin in December, I believe, and then you were doing the competition. Josh told me you were doing the competition. I was like, oh, I mean, whatever the outcome will be, we gotta talk.
Yes.
So I'm very happy. Yeah, go. Sorry.
Please go ahead, Leo. I have to.
Yeah.
I'm very excited to be here. Yes, please.
Yeah. How is now in Tokyo? Like, how did you already had dinner? You didn't. How is life? Like.
Well, as you know, we are first of all, I don't know if it will be. I believe it will be labeled on the below. But I will introduce quickly myself. So I'm Andrea Toccolini, and I work as a chief project manager for Kengo Kuma Associates. And therefore, yes, we didn't have dinner yet. I think it's the conclusion. No, we're still working here. It's almost 8:30 p.m. And you can see on my back, we have the skyline of Tokyo. That is, now it's a bit, with the reflection, it's not very neat. But I think that's the context. I'm fine. And I'm ready to do this conversation with you, I believe.
Okay. Yeah, no, I forgot. So for our audience, because my audience is not made of architects, so it's very nice to actually not have an architect audience because you can talk with the general public, and you have to make the effort of being both like smart in a way and easygoing. So that's kind of a challenge for us. So Andrea is, as he said, is the chief project manager for Kengo Kuma. Now, Kengo Kuma Associates is one of the most successful firms and studios globally. So, it is a privilege to have you on, and I'm sure the guys in the audience will also be feel like privileged. I will start with one first question.
Yes, let's start with the question.
Yeah.
I will. To be less specific, let's keep this very informal.
Yeah.
Nice.
How did you ever wonder how the Egyptians built the pyramids? Or
yes, I do. That's a funny story because architects. It's an interesting profession, I believe, because we have to know everything. People think that we are going and solving problems and therefore they know everything on a topic. On the other hand, as you imagine, it's very difficult, right? Especially when we approach the Egypt history. It's so vast and so complex and so rich that when we started doing this project, it was difficult. Therefore, the first thing I did, I went to Torino to see the museum. That is a fantastic collection. And then I think there are too many things almost, right? You've been there, so you see. And when I went to the library, I wanted to buy as much things as I could. And I bought a book about Egyptian architecture, and I finished it during the flight from Milano and Tokyo. And it's bringing his, reconstruction or theory, because I understood there is different theories of how the pyramids are built. There is some of the people thinking that water is involved in layers. That is apparently it's a bit fantasy, let's say. And so I tried to learn how this actually was built, and it's very impressive, right? I mean, I'm sure everybody knows more than me, but the pyramids was also one of the inspiration of our typology archetypes that then we decide to use as a reference. So I don't know, answering your question, I don't know if I can say I know how the pyramids are made, but I have a glimpse.
And what is the glimpse? What for you? Like, what's the, I don't know, just quickly, like the easiest.
What I found very interesting is all the problem of, so let's say the first thing for me was striking is the orientation. How could I make it that precise? And what I understood that the angle of degree, it's so precise what they wanted to achieve that is unbelievable how they actually made it with the tools they have. Mm-hmm. And therefore, let's say in a cascade steps of consequences, I were very interested about them marking, for example, the perimeter based on the moon and the sun and the shadow they casted. So once they did one side, and therefore then they were able to do the second one, then the diagonal, and they were sure that everything was in shape. And again, also the idea of this, I also find very interesting the way they decide the location, that it was in this flat land, but on the back you have all the quarry, mm-hmm. right? So it was easy to bring down, and when they finished that, then they were actually they'll take advantage of the proximity of the water that was mm-hmm. used to bring all the materials. And of course, lastly, I want to believe it's true, I believe it's true, the pristine cladding, no? And this kind of almost Taylor White finishing, that he was finishing the still precise but stacking stone finishing that they have. So I don't know if of course, Leo, what do you think? But you know what I mean.
No, I didn't expect actually you came to such a detail. So no, great. I didn't know you deep dives that much. No, it's I don't know how they build the pyramids. I obviously I know a few things already. I've been studying a little bit, as you know, maybe if you're following the Egyptian channel. And it's still the only things that are still a little bit of a mystery to me is how they lifted the stones up to there are 3 types of stones, but
there is an explanation. They did the spiral ramp.
But no, because the Scan Pyramids project didn't detect that ramp, unfortunately. So that's kind of.
But the ramp isn't assembled after.
Well, that's another theory. That's another one.
Don't you think that actually that's a bit of the thing, right? I mean, mm-hmm. It isn't so. Let's say another thing that's found very interesting is like there is so many debates on mm-hmm. how this things was done so precisely, mm-hmm. and then you make you understand how much buildings nowadays they don't last nothing compared. Of course, this is a very cheesy, but for everybody, you are actually this is one very interesting comparison. This is an actual real monument. Now it lasts forever, and we are still here getting inspired and start to understand how this is made so precisely. It's crazy with the tools. Like you mentioned, the 3D scan, fine, but they're still discovering things, right?
They just discovered the North Corridor one. It was already discovered by the Scan Pyramid project, but it was just confirmed lately that was there. So, but the big deal here is that they were able to actually officially discover it with the camera. Yeah. But they proved that the Scan Pyramid project overall works, which is a Japanese actually technology. So this means that they detected this void, and they didn't detect any. I mean, they detected also another big void above the Grand Gallery, which is kind of interesting. Yes. But they didn't detect any other voids in other pyramids that they scanned. For example, Khafre is the one to the side, and the Step Pyramid in Saqqara. They tried it, but they didn't detect it. So maybe the technology was not ready yet. But whatever.
That's correct for everybody, guys. Let me see if I can join the club. Mm-hmm. It's the mastaba, no? The Step Pyramid.
The Step Pyramid. The Step Pyramid is the first actually pyramid ever, which is a stack of mastabas on one on top of each other. Yeah.
You see, I'm prepared, and I swear we didn't know any questions.
Yeah. No, we didn't. No, it's
very, very. But wait a second. Let me understand one more thing. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you one more thing that is mm-hmm. interesting. Also the great chambers and the queen chambers in the corridor, it's something that was striking us. Like the structure stacks, this is interesting. They shared some, let's say, static and structural principle in between a way that in Japan we have to build things that we, like here, that is stacking the sides of the things, creating an overall structure that is basically sharing the load bearings. And the way the great chamber, the king chamber, I believe, it's made is also follow the same principle. And that's, you're totally right. That's 30 meters high, that space.
The queen chamber has the chevrons, so it's like this, the pitched roof. The grand gallery, you're talking about the grand gallery, and the grand gallery.
I'm talking about the queen chamber.
The queen chamber is like this. It has a pitched roof, and yes, it works.
But the structure underneath, it has this stacked big, like monoliths of stone.
So you're talking about the king chamber then? The king chamber, yeah, is the first flat ceiling of ancient Egypt. Like,
it's crazy. It's crazy. It's unbelievable. Yes.
I see your point. You're referring to Japanese architecture also because there is a way of stacking and work with gravity. Yes, great.
It's a way to share the loads, right? Because then you have all the loads of the overall part of the pyramid, and then you have a big void. That's actually difficult.
Yeah.
No? It's
for sure.
Anyways, next question.
Let's go into a little bit on the topic of today, maybe, because we have the presentation that you prepared for the extension of the Egyptian Museum of Turin, and my first question would be, first of all, before we start, is like, why was the studio interested in participating in this competition? Why?
Well, because first of all, the Egyptian Museum in Turin represents an excellency in the overall, I think, like art-related, ancient art museums in the world. As everybody knows, Turin has the second biggest collection of Egypt in the world, and itself, it's one of the, let's say, the reason why people go to Turin. And the building also, on the other hand, that's the second reason, has a very important heritage value. So the two, represented a great opportunity for us to challenge our design and try to see which would be the dialogue that we could have created. So that was, I think, the two reasons.
It's prestige for sure.
And weight of cultural values that were on, the table, right? It was the most, everybody knows about the Egyptian Museum, right?
Which is actually the first ever, is the first ever museum, Egyptian museum ever.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's kind of, but it's not as the thing is, marketing wise, it's like everybody thinks about the British Museum or the Egyptian Museum of Berlin because they have pieces. Like, for example, the Nefertiti bust is in Berlin, and then the Rosetta Stone is in the British Museum, and in the Louvre it's like, what? Tell me, like, not many people knows about the Louvre, that there is just this zodiac in the ceiling that they took from Egypt and put it in the ceiling of the Louvre.
But the Louvre is in the basement, right? I mean, in the sunken layers, in sunken levels.
Yeah. And in Turin, the really interesting one is the super interesting piece of Turin is the Papyrus of Turin, which is one of the really, really few documents we have to be able to detect what happened in the very first dynasties and before. So there are people claiming that ancient Egypt goes back to 36,000 years, whatever, and we have that Papyrus of Turin that gives us the information about that. Is really important.
It is.
Yeah.
But I can imagine. In general, I think the museum, it has this aura of this, let's say, classic, right, in our memory. We usually, for us, I think we go when we are kids. Like in Italy, everybody, I think, when is in elementary school, within their life, they go into, And I believe this is also one of the reasons why the competition was launched. Mm-hmm. That is another, let's say, giving continuity to your questions, not from our side, but I think they wanted to create this connection between the citizenship and the museum itself, right? Creating a bridge in between knowledge about Egypt and what could have been, let's say, a place for the city to gather so significant, so meaningful for Turin. So I think they wanted to somehow mine this bridge in between very specific knowledge and what could have present for Turin.
Yeah, exactly. The question I was following is like, what's the brief of the extension? Was actually my question is, was the brief? So was the purpose of the project extending the museum because the collection actually extended, or is just a rearrangement and refurbishment of what's there?
A little bit of both. In general, they wanted to have. I will show you now. I think after this, I don't know if you want, maybe we can jump in. They asked to cover the courtyard and to create this salotto. Salotto in Italian means like a living room. It's something also very typological of Torino. And on the other hand, as in all the museums in the world, this is something now that's happening more and more. They have a lot of artifacts, manufactures, like all whatever concern to the collection they have that is stored in the storage, like in the basement of the museum. So somehow, I think they also wanted to have a new experience underneath the courtyard where they could have actually showcased pieces. And the other request it was to have an immersive room, like this new technology where basically there was a full immersion in what could have been being in those places we were talking before, right? Mm-hmm. So that was the three requests.
Okay. Oh, interesting. Okay. Well, then let's jump in. Then I think I can just put the screen a little bit bigger, and I put myself very small.
Yes, let me see if you see the screen.
I do.
Okay, so very quickly, yes. So again, the request was this. This was our first this Kuma-san sketch, Kengo Kuma sketch, regarding this say idea that we had that we wanted to create a new roof, a new opportunity that was inspired strictly by nature and by some, and as everybody knows, nature was very important for the Egyptian culture, right? This imitation of nature and always having nature present. Therefore, we wanted to create this very light, self-supportive roof and structure. As I was saying, in Torino, Torino is a city that has a lot of culture and has this beautiful city center that is characterized by this pedestrian and slow mobility connections. And then there is this super characteristic and typology that is this covered, let's say, gallerias, right? Galleries, like covered patios that was sort of an imitation of the Passage, that is a typology, like a commercial street cover that was invented in France in the 19th century, so in 1800. And then due to proximity with Torino, France then was imported here and then somehow generates this typology, this architectural typology, and it creates this beautiful city center. And due to the fact that we were asked to create this covered courtyard, we wanted to establish this dialogue, right, with the system of the courts.
Mm-hmm.
As you can see, can you see me?
Yeah.
As you can see here, very briefly, this is very technical, but these are the courts, this is all the system of pedestrian, and this is the Egyptian Museum here. So therefore, what we wanted to create is to open this courtyard and to make it very permeable to what is all this pedestrian system, pedestrian network that the city has. So here you have one discover gallery, here is the Subalpina. As you can see inside here, we have like an open courtyard when there is also a little bit of vegetation. That is something that is also we tried to recreate in our, so you can see that all the ground floor was basically connected. And it was actually completing this beautiful system of big plazas such as Piazza San Carlo, San Carlo is this one, Piazza Castello. How we are doing this? As I was saying, we wanted to create a dialogue with the typology of the cover courtyard, and then we want to be inspired by nature, but inspired by nature by the structural behavior of the nature. And therefore, we got inspired by this mechanical let's say, mathematical structure that is this Miura-ori, that is origami-like structure that is invented by this astrophysic Japanese Miura. And we found very interesting the proximity and analogy we could create with the way the leaves are made. The leaves, actually, these kind of leaves are inspiring Miura in designing this mathematical system that is used nowadays for satellites. And also we like this idea that we could have found some references in the way the Egyptians representing nature in a specific way, the water. So therefore, we wanted to create this the first result, right? Through this, let's say, very, very thin, continuous glass shell. We wanted to create a very open space, a space without columns, a space free for people to live and to be inhabited. And of course, why? Also, as I was saying before, because the museum represents an excellencies, and we didn't want to have any elements composing vertically the structure or horizontally the structure that was basically obstaculating and interfering with the view of the building. So we wanted always to be able to read the old building as it was, right? And on the other hand, we wanted this to be able to be done also from the higher part of the building. Therefore, we wanted to keep this permeability visual. And here, actually, as you can see, like I showed you before, the image of the water in the Egyptian, and somehow this is our design, resembling nature, resembling this system of folding of the leaves. And all this glass roof, it's working as a single element, like if it was casted in one time, because due to this, as I said, fold system, so mountain and valley, the valley is the lower part, the mountain is the higher part, they all work like a one solid element. And this allows us to not to have any columns on the space. And then just the only, let's say, interaction we had, it was with the perimeter. And as you can see here, it's nice because you can see the sense that there is a rich geometry that is somehow creating this light shadow effect, but also keeps the light very, allows a strong transparency in the space. On the other hand, as I was saying, this to create a very alive space, a live moment for the city. We got inspired by the winter gardens and the galleries, the Gallerie Coperte, like the Torino galleries, and the winter gardens that are very famous because for two reasons that we found very peculiar. One is that, let's say, they allow the creation of and allow to grow tropical plants, and on the other hand, they also were used for social events. So we wanted to create a space that was as inclusive as possible, as free as possible. And as you can see in this image, we wanted to celebrate the Egyptian garden as the main protagonist of the nature of the space. So the nature in the center of this courtyard. Actually, existing right now, there is one garden that is not sunken as we designed. It's just at the level of the courtyard. And then what's our proposal, and then I will explain it, it is to increase the presence of the garden and then integrate it with the way you access also to the lower level. So as you can see here, this is a little bit the plan for everybody. This is called Egyptian axonometry. That is basically a 2D way to represent three-dimensionally the architecture. And is, of course, it's a reference to the way Egyptians were representing in their paintings, the characters, the nature, etc. So as you can see, very briefly, so this is the main street. You enter from here, you have the first foyer, and then you have the cafe, and then the temporary gallery, and then you enter here, and then we created directly connection with the Galleria that is the one of the most important recent refurbishment and gallery in the museum. And then you enter in the main courtyard, as I described here, where you have all the activities, right? You have the cafe, therefore is an interpretation of this Torino lifestyle, right? So very Italian, you go inside, you have an aperitivo, you stay there. You have the ticketing, and then you have these two lush gardens that the guide belongs to. Then we create an open connection with the Lesia temple, that he was, as Leo knows, and everybody knows better than me, it was something gifted from Egypt. So in this way also we wanted to create this direct connection with that. We want this to become a free moment. This was one of the requests from the brief, to be able always to visit this part as part of this citizenship experience. And then we keep the existing entrance, and from here on we started designing a big scenography that is inspired by the world of Egypt. So as you can see, I go very quickly here because you already see this is the two moments. So on the left we have the cafe, on the right we have the temporary gallery. Both are designed inspired by this motif, as I described before, of the origami, and this is ori. Ori in Japanese means folding. And we wanted to use also paper and to try to find sort of a connection between the way Egyptian were using papyrus, and we could have used washi, that is a typical Japanese paper still produced. So somehow that was always this kind of a dialogue with Egypt and contemporary architecture and design. And then here, as I described before, this is the main element, is the main moment. And as the brief was calling it, we wanted to create an agora, right? So a place where the community, without paying ticket, they would be able to spend their time and then get close to what are the contents, the public contents of the Egyptian Museum. And as I was saying, this is the last part. It's the bookshop. And from here, it's the beginning of the entrance of the sequence of the museum. From here on, you enter in the realm of Egypt in our interpretation, and therefore we start designing this sequence, the scenography inspired by the Egypt references. And as I was saying, so what actually was very interesting for us is this the thematic of the discovery, the excitement of the discovery, the shape and the design of the Great Gallery, and then the light as an element of connection, because, as everybody knows, sometimes you have this very dramatic light that is penetrating inside of the pyramids and in between spaces in the temples. So something also we find very interesting. And as you can see here, this will be the arrival from the level before. So this is actually one of the few moments of natural light that still we have. And we redesigned all the walls following a sort of reinterpretation of the Great Gallery. And one more thing we wanted to do here is, as I was saying before, to being able to expose, to give a space, this area and volume where all the manufacts that could have been displayed, right? So all the pieces that usually they stay hidden and not showcased, they could have been showed along these walls, as you can see here. And here is the lower level, as I was saying before. The sequence was in the image I showed before, it was from here. Then we would have gone straight forward in this main black box that is the multimedia. These two reversed cones are amphitheaters, are the two gardens that I was mentioning before. And then connecting everything, we have a corridor. And this design that I was showing before, it's basically the elements that is connecting everything. We try to create a system that was somehow linked as much as we can with the circulation that exists there. And for everybody to know, this is the entrance moment of the actual collection. So in this museum is interesting, and our sequence makes sense. You are in the light, you're in this very bright moment, and you go in the dark part. You go through an immersive reconstruction of what Egypt was, and then you enter in the old building and then in the collection itself. So as I was saying, this is the sequence, right? So guided by this limestone hammered walls. Then you discover also here these two moments of light. And this is the corridor I was explaining before. Therefore, like, as I was saying, right, we have this possibility to showcase pieces of art. And also till here, it's without paying ticket. It means that we designed this experience to be accessible by everybody. And this part here is this multimedia, the reconstruction of, in this case, of Karnak temple with this new technology. The idea was like, again, to be inside of this fiction. I think this is an interesting moment because it's also here for free. You don't have to pay a ticket. And then you can see the light filtering through the gardens on the back. So always the light is an element that is very present in our design. And last is the garden. And here, as I was saying, this is on the right is the existing garden that you find right now. And we got inspired by both very famous garden, of course, Amarna, for the geometries, for the typology, for the richness, and also more like, let's say, domestic scale, since the scale of the quarter is not very big, right? And here you can see a little bit what we start, right, to design this garden that was basically, it's an opportunity for the visitor to be, first of all, to know and discover things about the type of vegetation that existed at the time, and on the other hand, to be at contact with nature. And last, to create a continuous system, right? Is somehow, as I was saying, this alternancy between light and shadow. It's very important in our project. And as you can see here, then this is a view from below, from this courtyard, this sunken courtyard, looking at the sky, right? And this continuity and keep discovery, it's just something very important for us. Last thing that I would say about the project, and I will quickly, as you saw, the roof itself, as I was explaining at the beginning, has a very, very low impact. And this was made possible by the type of structure we designed, we applied, and this very thin scalable systems and vertical posts that were actually helping the structure to be happening and to be, let's say, strong and somehow was creating this very nice, let's say, light effect, right? So you have always the light that is reflected by this cloud of vertical elements, in this case with bronze. And this is something that we found very, very powerful in our proposal. As you can see here, this is the overall summary of the design. You have the roof, then you have this connection with the lower levels of transition. You see that the way we designed the roof is also inspired, as I was saying, by the typical Italian glass roof that is a bit vaulted, so it's curved. And here, as I was saying, this is a sequence from the entrance point to the main courtyard and entering this realm of Egypt, and everything covered by this glass roof. As you can see here, that is highly transparent because we designed it in a way that it was possible to be like this. We have a hidden join integrated in the lamination of the glass. So this would have, in our opinion, would have been an opportunity to explore also a constructive typology that in Italy still now, is explored, but would have been a great opportunity for the museum in order to create I will finish here, a full transparent space, a space that is basically for the citizenship.
Wow.
So thank you very much. I hope everything was clear, you enjoyed this quick presentation. And Leo, if you have any questions, we want to do Q&A a bit more.
For sure. Thank you. It's wonderful, Andrea. It's wonderful. First question, just very quickly. How many people were involved in the project overall? Engineers and architects and everything together, more or less?
Well, our team. Well, we have our team, and our team we have multidisciplinary, right? We work a lot with engineers within our office also, because this is a typical, as I explained at the beginning, is a Japanese structural system, right? That is used for satellites, and therefore we adapted it to the glass, but it's something that is not done, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Then we have the support for a fantastic local team. Daniele Lauria is our local architect.
Okay.
And then we have Mannelli engineers that were engineering from Italy, that they were very permeable, very enthusiastic in trying to also to accompany on the process. Then we have a lot of great, we have international collaborations with other engineers that were specialized in glass. That is called EOC engineering. They're very, 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 they're great to work with.
They are the same as Anne Holtrop, or?
No,
Okay.
Yes, they're linked because Anne Holtrop is working with Emmanuel Barois, that is the supplier of the glass, and I believe EOC is also involved. And they're both fantastic because I also work with Emmanuel.
Okay.
I give you like some hints, but we have an option. We have this option, another option that was inspired by the Great Pyramid structure. So it was a completely different scheme. And in that moment, we had a few interesting meetings with them. So overall, yes, we had a great team, and all our team is fantastic. And the young team, Tommaso Abbado, supported us a lot. It was a pleasure in general.
Okay. No, great.
That's a pity we didn't win. But we lost against a great project, so also that is it's always less painful, let's say.
Yeah, well, for sure. But your project is actually I find it way more beautiful. But this is just my own opinion. Now I have a difficult question, and it's gonna challenge you, and I think it's gonna be nice for the future also to have it in your head. Where do you feel is the balance between evoking the past and without cliche, let's say? Where do you feel is the balance? Difficult, I know. Challenging.
Well, I would start saying that to be, let's say, to do something that is exactly, I don't know in English the word probably, but in Italian it's storicismo. So when you're like tend to imitate too much the history reference you have, that's of course the worst thing you can do. I think the balance in general, as I was saying at the beginning, is we are a profession that we are asked to know everything, but we can't know everything. I think, when you find a nice balance in between this playfulness and you have enough resources to take decisions and knowing what you're doing, but trying also to create a new dialogue, that's actually, I think, is the answer. I believe so. I want to say one more thing on that. Our design, as I explained, the roof has one clear dialogue between nature and structure, let's say. The lower part itself is a scenography. And then scenography is another thing. Architecture sometimes is a scenography, right? Design exhibition is a scenography. So we intended in that. So that was wanted to merge completely in a world where materiality was similar, the nature was similar, the light was similar. But the most architectural part of the intervention is the roof. Right? The other part was a fantastic experience.
So in a way, the scenographic piece, you're kind of taking it as not as a temporary thing, but more or less, right?
Well, that's a big difference we did compared to the other two. We can say names with OMA. That again, I think that did a great proposal because they intend the plaza, I believe, to be able, let's say, to be a timeless moment, right? That they design a device for the city, right? It's actually it could be a plaza for a museum that is not specifically, I believe, the Egyptian Museum. Right? It's a beautiful project. The Sunken Garden has very specific moments, but in general, it's a plaza that works for a museum, right? We designed a plaza, a courtyard that's designed for a city as Toccolini, knowing, as you said, that things they change very quickly, and in that sense, yes, the way it could have been designed could have changed. But what we wanted to be always present is this roof, and the possibility that this roof has always these two gardens present now. Then, of course, the sequence itself is something we imagine would last long, but in general, I think in this case would be something that is accepting the time and when the society will be living somehow. So again, they were very different approach. I don't think one is better than the other one. I think they're very different.
Yeah, no, for sure. There are two different things. One is very light, and the other is just amazing. Andrea, really, congratulations. You wanted to how much was Kengo directly involved in this? How does it work with him?
Kuma-san, as we say, Kuma-san is very enthusiastic in general, and he's always there for us when let's say when we need to have a brainstorm, we need to have an idea, we need to confirm things, and it's always want to be very involved in the project. So we have several meetings with him, and it was very, very helpful, of course. And yes, he's always very involved in the project. He trying to allocate a lot of time in following the design and giving directions.
No, it's great because it's not easy to manage a big practice and be present at the same time in the office, and also when you have more than one office in the world, so it's kind of cool. And I want to say that the project is pretty clear in its intentions, and it's very in Italian you will say pertinente, in English would be, I don't know, pertinent. I don't know. Spot on. I see. And then. And it reminds a little bit the British Museum has a little bit of that glass cover, and the Louvre as well has the pyramid glass ceiling. So it kind of it's still in a way is echoing also a little bit the way that the Egyptian museums are, or not Egyptian museum, but museum in general in the world are. Marketing the entry halls in a way, and it's super cool.
But in general, I think that thank you for the kind words. In general, I believe in that's true, very true. It's there was a challenge in general because of course we have to measure itself always at very high level with very high level examples, and what's very difficult is how we can add one more layer on the discussion, and I think in that sense, I believe we did a good job. On the other hand, it seems perfect because in Torino, this is maybe the strongest, one of the strongest typology in architecture. So to have this covered glass space. So I find this project was very natural, and
Oh yeah,
I think that's quite clear, maybe. Well, that's why it's coherent, as you were saying.
And how just very, I think all my questions are gone, so I can just have like the easygoing one. If you have any, like when you went there to Turin, can you share any details of how the meeting went, or you can't share anything? I don't know, like the whole.
I think this is a bit confidential.
Okay.
In general, I think the intent of the museum. There is a great enthusiasm in everybody involved in the project, from the Fondazione San Paolo to everybody, the director. Everybody was interesting to discuss with. I think everybody liked a lot our proposal, but I think in general they say the future of the museum is in good hands. That's what I understood, and for the reason I was saying before, because it's minding a bit a bridge that Louvre already minded. Like you go to Louvre, but or British Museum or Smithsonian, it's a winter garden. I think it's important to involve people to make the museum to be alive, not just for what actually it's showcased, but to mind this distance. So yes, I think that was, and for sure is what is going to happen. We will go to a Egyptian museum now, and we will have other things to happening rather than the exhibition. That I think it's a plus.
No, it's So I actually see the proposal, and I keep on thinking, oh, I wish he would have won the first prize, which is the same thing that I feel about the Cairo Museum that they're finishing now to build the Great Egyptian Museum. And I don't know if you know, but basically the Great Egyptian Museum, GEM, it's being built right now in front of the pyramids, and it's not too far away from the pyramids, and it kind of sucks because it's quite close. But anyway, and they are shifting. So now the Cairo Museum, which holds the biggest collection of of Egyptian artifacts, which is kind of crazy. You go there and you spend I spent like I don't know how many hours and how many times been there, and but they're moving everything from that building, the historical Cairo Museum. Everybody loves it, movies and exhibit. They're moving everything to the new museum, and it's probably the biggest museum in the world, like something like that. I don't know.
Probably I was doing something like that. Yeah, of course the collection is huge. The pieces are huge. No?
Yeah. Also, well, yeah, they have a few a few big ones. They have Ramses, one big Ramses one, which is I don't know, like 20 meters tall or more. Like it's, but the thing is that unfortunately, I say unfortunately because I prefer the second option, the one that Eros Matteo designed, which I'm very glad that next week also George will come to the podcast also, so to explain the project that unfortunately they didn't make it. But I actually wanted to mention before we forget that you just won another competition, right, or something like that.
Today, yeah, we did. We won a competition in Butrint for a new visitor center of the Butrint National Park and Archaeological Center. So somehow, still always linked to humanistic context. So yes, that's actually great news. And yeah, we can do. Yeah, like next time we talk about that.
Oh wow!
It's gonna be
okay, even if it's not Egyptian.
Yeah, it's not. No, there is no link with. No, there is no link in that case. But as a huge palimpsest, that place is from Romans, the Greeks, Romans, Venetians, Ottomans. It's a very very dense as well context.
Yes.
Yeah, we face the same struggles in what we need to know. That's basically the question you asked me. It's very difficult all the time.
What do you mean by that? What do we mean? What do we need to do as architects?
What we need to investigate? How much we need to learn about everything, right? And more vast and more challenging that the Egyptian culture, I think, till now didn't. It was very very interesting and is probably one of the most wide, let's say, in terms of notions, in terms of things I asked. Sometimes, when I was doing the competition, I was listening to your podcast because it's the easiest way to learn things, right? And of course, I was reading a lot, etc. So these things that are in there, yes.
I didn't know you were listening to my podcast actually, so I'm quite happy.
There's like in the US, there is a lot of great experts, especially about the gardens, because the gardens, as I understood, are the one that has less witness. Like there is less
remains. Yes.
Remnants, right?
Yeah, because normally the gardens they used to make it where the Nile floods, and now it floods every year, so it goes up and down, and but also in Amarna for sure when Akhenaten was doing his own capital city.
Yes.
Those beautiful drawings that we know, and nature just pops up, like it just explodes in that period of time. You just mentioned that when you mentioned the nature, and when you mentioned the nature in your project, you actually got it so well. It was the right time. It was like around 20 years, over 3,000, where the Egyptians started to depict nature in an unprecedented way. It was Akhenaten and Tutankhamun and all that family. So it was just really.
Actually, Akhenaten, for me, let's say, it's one way I'm more familiar beside all the, say, because I found very interesting also, he developed a different way to build, right? The Tel Al Amarna. Yes, correct. So he was using like a smaller size of stones. So I found that very interesting, all that period in general. Yes, so that's something that
it's 3,000 years of history. It changes and changes and changes. I started this YouTube channel because in Polytechnic of Milan and the course of history of architecture, I'm fine, great education, I'm not gonna complain, but the history of architecture, the first lesson, I remember she said, no, we're not gonna study ancient Egyptian architecture because they never built or produced anything sophisticated enough for us to worth it to study. And I was like, really? So I always ignored it. And then 10 years later, I'm here with an Egyptian podcast and talking about how great is ancient Egyptian architecture and how inspiring it can be for contemporary architecture, such as the studio you work for. And you know, after 3,000 years, we are here talking about it.
Exactly.
Okay. You had something to add? Or you want to go party?
No, exactly. It's getting a bit late.
Yeah.
No, I mean, if you have any more questions, I'm more than happy.
No, I think we run out of questions. I mean, not that we run out. As far as I'm very satisfied with this.
Yes,
Okay. So you're gonna party with your team now from the Albania competition, right?
Yes. Now we have this ritual that we go, even if we lose or win, at least we go. Yeah. And we stay with the team. Yes.
And what do you do? Like karaoke thing? Or?
No. I mean, I'm not a big fan in general. But no, you go out. There is Tokyo is a very diverse city. There's a lot of things to do. So it's fantastic.
For sure. Yeah. I have to say thank you to George to make this interview happen. So thank you, George, if you're here listening. And
we should spend a word with George. Yes, George is a very talented architect that is working with us, and he worked on this project with me. And he also studied with us all together in Lisbon. Let's mention it, Leo, sometimes that we did together. This university is called Autonoma di Lisboa, UAL. Therefore, yes, it's great, and we are able to, to keep the university proud up. Let's say.
For sure. No, you're definitely one of the, the most one of the few that the university could be super proud of. In my case, I'm a freelancer. I'm like, I took a different path. And
George with us, etc. Anyways, special thanks to George that he made this happen. He worked with us. He's part of this amazing project.
Yeah.
So yes.
Okay. Well, Andrea, I wish you a very good night. I think we can wrap it up. And if for people, if you haven't subscribed, what are you waiting for? And if you like the video, go for smash the like button. I have to mention this YouTuber stuff.